Hey, it's Jack, and this video is called Why is Life So Hard? Whew. Firstly, obviously, but important to say, if you are struggling right now, I'm sorry to hear that. I've also been dealing with a lot of struggling in the last year, and it can be really rough. It can be really hard when you're trying to show up and improve things and you don't know how to, or the things you're doing aren't creating a real impact. And so it can be easy to get into frustration, chronic frustration, resignation, hopelessness. And those are kind of a cocktail of, depressive impacts, right? Where even perhaps getting up and getting into your day, or, perhaps you're lying in bed late at night worrying, or maybe you want to sleep and you can't sleep. I also know what it's like to have some chronic insomnia, and it's really challenging. Maybe you're in relationship pain. Maybe you are unemployed and you can't catch a break financially. Maybe you've been through huge transition and loss and grief. Maybe you're isolated and lonely. Perhaps you're worn out. Perhaps you're just like lacking in meaning, and you're like, what is this even all about? Why do I want to continue to show up for any of this? So if you've had any or all or different experiences that are relevant, I'm sorry, and I'm rooting for you, and hang in there. And my intention with this video is just to give you some perspectives, perhaps some scaffolding that may be able to help you out in this time of challenge, if that's what you're going through right now. So let's get into it. So the first reason that life could be hard is because you are living a transformational life. And perhaps right now you are in some process of transformation, perhaps even one that you haven't fully acknowledged, articulated to yourself. And perhaps even as I'm saying this, it may not be obvious to you that that's what's happening, but maybe in the fullness of time, or if you sit with it a little bit, you start to be open to the idea, maybe I am in some kind of transformation. We sometimes use the metaphor of the chrysalis, right? So the metaphor of the chrysalis is, the caterpillar is becoming a butterfly, and the caterpillar has no idea about what it is to be a butterfly. And as beautiful as, a butterfly may be in the end, I love butterflies, always happy to see, on cue. Oh, I don't know if you can see that. That was amazing. I was like, always happy to see a butterfly. Be careful what you ask for, this beautiful white, orange-tipped butterfly. Anyways, so, as beautiful as a butterfly can be, that process of the caterpillar becoming the butterfly, and it goes into the, into its cocoon, and it starts kind of liquefying and transforming. It's probably a really uncomfortable process, or at least it's a really unknown process, right? And the thing in the middle doesn't look that much. No one gets that excited about the thing in the middle of that transformational process, in the same way that you might be struggling with your life right now, because perhaps some of the typical ways that you have dealt with reality, the ways of being that you have cultivated and that maybe have even worked for you in the past, are now not really working, or they're not providing you with the same level of impact or meaning. And that has you concerned. Maybe it has you freaking out. Maybe it has you confused and down on yourself, because it's almost like, wow, I used to be able to go to the gym and I could kind of like lift 50 pounds. Now I'm going in and 30 pounds is not even working, and I feel exhausted and I don't even want to go, right? So in the middle of this transformational process, which, by the way, for those of us that have a transformational life, this may not just be a one and done, right? In the sort of caterpillar to butterfly. This might happen ongoingly, or it might happen meaningfully in several junctures of your life. So just because you've gone through a transformation in the past, that might be chrysalis 1.0. Now you're hitting chrysalis 2.0 or 5.0, and it's actually a whole different game, right? So it's not like, oh, I can just remember the thing that happened in the past and that's happening again. It's like, no, this is a different transformation, right? It's like caterpillar, that is the integrated caterpillar butterfly. The caterpillar becomes the butterfly, but then suddenly, like, maybe the butterfly is going to become a cat, so to speak, and has no idea looking backwards, right? You know, Kierkegaard says you can connect the dots only looking backwards. Sometimes when you're going forwards, you've got no idea what is in store, and you've got no idea what you're becoming, and you actually have no idea who you even are right now. So I'm just laying that out because sometimes I found in the work that I've done with my clients that in these transformation processes, people can be poorly supported, right? Because the people around you may not be living a transformational life, or they may not understand the specific transformation that you're going through. So the reflections that you're getting might be people trying to be helpful and suggesting, you know, all sorts of things that you could be putting your attention into. Have you tried this? Have you been to this doctor? Have you thought of this career path? Have you been to this therapist? Have you tried this particular type of medicine journey? It could be all sorts of things that people are suggesting, but actually maybe none of it is needed right now. And what's needed is a deeper surrender from you into the process of your own transformation, into the process of your own unknown becoming, right? This, like, I don't know what's around the corner, but actually I'm just going to relax as much as I can into the fact that I don't know what's coming around the corner, right? If I said, you're going to get a call sometime in the next week, it doesn't necessarily help you to sit by the phone and think, well, when's this call coming? When's this call coming? When's this call coming? What you can relax into is, when that phone rings, I know what it's like for a phone to ring. I can pick up the phone. I can take the call. So in your own transformation, you might want to notice, what if I could actually just have as few ideas as possible about what is happening for me right now? What if I could make it okay? Yeah, I'm in a dark spot. I'm in a hard place. And part of me doesn't like that. Part of me wonders why it's so hard. But if I just take that overlay off for the moment and just notice, well, this is what it is, this is what's happening, and, you know, to everything a season, right? So you're not going to be stuck in this process for the rest of your life. It may go on longer than you anticipate. It may go on longer than part of you wants. But what you'll probably find is that at some point things will shift, because the nature of life is unfolding and dynamism, change, right? Nothing stays static. I mean, God, you see I'm in these beautiful surroundings. You just notice the amount of activity that is happening all the time. What looks like a kind of still scene, it's just like humming with insects, right? And things that are growing as we're in spring here. So the nature of life is unfolding. It's not just static. So things will probably shift, but it may not be in a time of your own choosing, and it may not be in a time of, where you have foresight as to actually when it is that you're going to change. So that's one set of possibilities, that you could relax more and accept that you're having a transformational season in your life. The second reason that life could be hard is because life in part is hard. Now, I don't mean that in a facile way, just that I think partly our expectations are sometimes that we want to live a fulfilled life. And of course, all the power to that. Is almost the gift of maybe, say, at least in a Western context, for a lot of us, we sort of think fulfillment is a sort of birthright, that we have the right to, the pursuit of happiness, that we have a right to go for it, and perhaps that we should feel happy and fulfilled. The reality to me seems to be a lot more complex than that, right? That life in the 21st century, in this sort of mix of tradition and all the benefits of modernity in terms of, communications and healthcare and business and globalization, but also this kind of postmodern overlay that a lot of us are experiencing, where we want to turn inwards and meditate and know ourselves more deeply and express ourselves more fully and be much more connected to nature and our impact as living beings in a living earth. Most of us are living much more complex lives, whether we've particularly chosen it or not, than a lot of our forebears, right? That we have demands on our attention, that we have sort of almost an infinite multiplicity of lives that we could be living right now, or places that we could be. It's just a lot in some ways. And there's also a lot of privilege, obviously, of being someone that lives at a time where lots of things that in the past would have meant, severely curtailed lives. Now we have often ways of being with that. But we're also seeing some of the limitations of the dominant ways that we've come to do life on this earth. So, you might be having a hard time because the dominant narratives that you grew up with, that you inherited about what this life is, what the self is, who you are no longer sufficient to the life that you're living, right? That you're almost having to create new models, ways of being, frameworks, things to put your attention on. And that's at a time that, we've been in this kind of chronic year of disconnection. And it's at a time where we have so much seeming visibility on what everyone else is doing, whether that's actually the real picture of the whole lives that we're leading. So I think it's easy for me even to get into a situation where some form of negative self-comparison or fear of missing out, or just a sort of sense like, wasn't all this technological progress somehow meant to make our lives kind of easier? And maybe, it's easier to have a dishwasher than to have to wash all the dishes by hand. But some of the simplest things in life, some of the most beautiful things in life, we seem to have a harder time kind of majoring in. So, the second reason that life might be hard is partly because you're on the edge of evolution. You're not able to live just an inherited life, right? In the sense, for a lot of time, people are either just living in a framework of survival, that survival to reproduce was enough. Many people wouldn't have made adulthood, let alone reproduction, let alone anything like the long lives that we now have an expectation a lot of us of leading. Or what you would have done in your life, whether that was, as a homemaker or as a way of making a living, would have just been kind of given to you. You were going to be a smith because your father was a smith, or you were going to be home help because your mum was a home help, or do you see what I mean? You were just going to inherit a life to some extent. There wouldn't have been a huge amount of freedom to personally express in that kind of life. So it might be that what you're actually trying to do in the things you're trying to put together in your life is a gift to future generations in a way that you couldn't even really understand. But you're actually, the possibility of your life is pushing some edges. The things that you're trying to reconcile, the localism, the globalism, the technology, that all of that is kind of new in certain ways, and we don't have particularly great models necessarily of dealing with it. Or we just have to accept that, life has seasons, and maybe you're in a difficult patch right now, but it doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be that way. And it doesn't mean that it shouldn't be that way, right? Some of our darkest days, our deepest wounds, our, most heartfelt grief, it's not like I'd wish that on someone, but it may also be important to your journey, right? That, it's not just this sort of inexorable rise, that, life has valleys, life has dark days, and there's the benefit of the contrast from a dark day to a bright day, but there's also the humanity that gives you, right? When you've touched into your own sorrow, when you've come up against your own limitations, there is a kind of humility that comes from that. There is a kind of compassion that comes from that. If life is just one series of sort of crushing itness after another, I'm not sure if that's going to really teach you the depth of your own humanity and the limitations of your own humanity and frailty, right? I think we all want to be these sort of ebullient, confident, sort of remarkable versions of ourselves, and absolutely take aim at that. But we're not only that, right? We're not only strong and bright and beautiful, right? We're also flawed. We're also complex. We're also fearful and confused and lots of other things. So in a way, I see that the full palette of the human experience is why life being hard can be an important thing. All right, the third thing I want to say in this video, and thanks for sticking with me. I know I've been kind of going at this at length, but if you're struggling, I hope I'm perhaps giving you a few things, at least some stimulus to think about or to feel into. The third possibility is that you're in a bit of a rut and that actually it's time to take some action or some different action. right? If you know that you perhaps have a proneness to overthinking things, overanalyzing, getting stuck in your thoughts, getting nostalgic in a way that's not just perhaps present moment nostalgia washing over you, but you sort of routinely are referencing the past. Perhaps you're still stuck in the past in some way. Maybe it's a previous relationship or career or home or something that was taken from you before you were ready to give it up, or something that you lost that you can never get back, right? Maybe a pet or a person, and that it's now time to honor that you're in a different cycle, and that cycle is going to need some initiation energy from you. It's going to need you to claim some form of action. Perhaps you've been stuck in complexity and now it's time to actually drive forward with simplicity, right? Maybe you are aware there's some dietary changes that you want to make, but you've kind of been stuck because you don't really know. There's all these diets out there. There's all these different types of advice. You've been stuck at home. You can't even shop in the normal way. But perhaps now it's coming into cycle for you to say, well, what would be the most simple and supported way of me doing this? You know, what about if I could make this incredibly simple for myself? So I have to just follow the most simple protocol, or I need to get someone that I'm going to hire that's going to help me devise that simple plan, right? So life is hard because you're actually stuck in your head or in your emotions, and it's stopping you from stepping into meaningful action, right? One of the ways that we can think of presence, as opposed to just, being still on the meditation cushion, presence can also mean being engaged in the action that is most important to your heart, right? I'm actually present to my heart, and I can convert that into action, into things with my hands or things that I step forward and do. It's so easy to be busy, but without necessarily being rooted in what we most care about, what's in our heart. So maybe you're having a hard time because actually you need some support and you haven't yet solicited it, and it's an edge for you and you need to go ask for it. I know certainly it can be an edge for me to get support in certain ways because I'm kind of complex. And so if I'm going to have someone support me, let's say as a counselor, therapist, or coach, there's going to be some qualifications there for me on a quality of connection, empathy, deep listening, reflection, that for me is going to have it feel like I'm really supported. So for you, what is it that maybe is stopping you getting the support that you need? Are there ways that you haven't fully articulated or asked for it? Are there resources that you're not yet connected to, but maybe there are other people that could help connect you to them? Are you afraid of making a mistake? Like, what is keeping you, if we can just imagine for a moment that life now doesn't want you stuck. Sometimes life does want you stuck, right? Because sometimes you're working so hard and burning out that life is going to say, okay, I'm going to stick you in bed for several weeks or months or years so that you can actually recover and learn how to do a different thing, right? So sometimes stuckness is absolutely appropriate. But if you've been stuck for a long time and maybe it's like a default pattern to be stuck, then it might be a question of, what's the most simple action that I could take, even if it's more time consuming or more expensive than I would like it to be, right? Because I know in times in the past, it's like, wow, there's all these different options and God, it seems kind of expensive. And so I'm trying to optimize for how can I do this more cost effectively? And it's like, you know what? Yes, but if that is now an excuse to stay stuck, let's spend the extra bit of money and let's take some action, right? So what is it that would have you step into action? And it might not be that you're going to feel comfortable first, right? I often say this to my clients. It's not sometimes you're going to have to wait until you feel completely ready. How many times does life call you to do things you don't feel completely ready for, that it still feels a bit like you're kind of stepping 1 foot over the edge of the cliff? Am I going to be supported? Am I going to be held? Is it going to be okay? Right? Perhaps your anxiety loop is kind of running and you're afraid. You don't know. Is it going to be okay? And it might just be that you need to take that first step and just keep taking steps and just keep walking and seeing, okay, I'm okay. And I'll often say this to myself and my clients, you can always go back. The thing that you know how to do, your default strategy, your go-to thing, the thing that you've been doing, even if it's perhaps been keeping you stuck, you're still going to have access to, right? I say it's still a golf club in the golf bag, or it's still in your locker, whatever metaphor works, you're still going to be able to draw on that. So trying something new, if what you're doing is not working, you can always go back to the old, right? So let's have you try something new. The final thing that I want to say in this video is you may be being invited to upgrade your worldview to include suffering. Some of us, particularly those of us that are drawn to the personal growth space, we're quite upside and possibility oriented, right? We want to improve, we want to grow, we want to transform, we want to make waves, we want to make it happen. Perhaps we want to make a dent on history. We want to have a mission, a career that's meaningful. We want to have a relationship that's meaningful. We want to support our families or be supported. There's lots like on the upside, like what's your vision for life? And that vision can be really important and compelling. Sometimes we also need sobriety, right? Sobriety, not too much, not too little, not too much vision that we can't actually be with the reality of life as it is, that we're going to miss the here and nowness, this moment of our experience. So part of what you may be being asked to include is, particularly if you've had a life that maybe you've had some lucky breaks, or maybe you had a time where you felt like you were really doing well and in the flow and in the groove, and now you're not, it might be just to accept that that is part of life. And that acceptance actually makes you a more real person. And you might need to discern, is that hopelessness and resignation, or is it actually presence, surrender, and sobriety? Because I'm asking you for the sobriety and surrender version of reality, not that if I let go and I'm more accepting of what's here, that I've just resigned myself to to less truth or less of my life. Is actually saying, no, you can't always be on the up, right? Maybe, even a stock, right, that goes up, it doesn't just go up like this typically, right? It does this. Sometimes it's on the drop, right? So even if your life is expanding and improving over time, there's going to be challenges, and there's going to be days where it's not obvious to you. And then there's also going to be these bigger moments in your life where you're like, we're going through a complete operating system upgrade that I didn't even ask for. Life wants it for you on your behalf. It knows that you're ready. You might not even know you're ready. You might even know it's happening, but it is happening. And that's the time that this deeper self-acceptance, this deeper trust, faith, if you will, that maybe it's going to be okay. As long as I can keep showing up, stay present, do my part as best I can. But then there's also that place where I need to let go, right? Let go, let it happen. See what life wants for me, see what is emerging here. I don't have to know what's around every corner. I don't have to do it right. I don't have to be full of energy every day. It's okay that some days I have energy, some days I don't. Some days I'm on form, some days I'm not. Some days I'm happy, some days I'm sad. Some days I'm potent, some days I'm weak. Some days I'm inspired, some days I'm depressed, right? That actually that full flavor, all the octaves of the piano, as I would call it, that is part of being a human, and it actually makes you better. You're not at your best when everything is just always in flow and going well, right? Sometimes we need to fall down. Sometimes we need to be humbled. Sometimes we need to scrape our knees across the earth for a bit. Sometimes we need to get dirty and messy and stuck in order to deepen, transform, learn, and be in the fullness of this human experience. So may that have been helpful for you. Please leave me a comment. Let me know what's your experience. Let me know if this is making sense. If you disagree, push back. I'm open to all of it. Like the video. It helps me get this word out. If you found some value in this video, maybe there's just even one person somewhere in the world that's stuck right now that could help, or this might just give them a bit of a different perspective. And if you like what you've gotten here, please subscribe to the channel. Hit subscribe, tap the bell notification, because it lets you hear of new videos as soon as they come out. Also lets you hear if I'm going live. I do sometimes spontaneously go live, and the only way to hear of that is if you are notified of new videos. So that's what I've got. Look forward to reading your comments. And as always, I'm Jack. Thanks for being here.